We have a real treat for you here today. So my buddy Kelly was on the show a month or so ago. He has a new project coming out with the gentleman drinking from the Canada mug, who you guys all might recognize, the one, the only Mr. Steve Negus. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Fantastic.
We're good,
Happy to be here.
Thanks
Awesome.
for having us.
So I had no idea you lived in Hamilton, Steve. Tell us about this project that's just about ready to be coming out.
Okay, well, there's so much to talk about, but yeah, it's taken us probably about 12 years to do this album, but I'm totally happy with that. That was kind of in the plans. Basically, it's instrumental. I guess you would call it prog. A lot of Latino influence, sort of more world music. It's kind of hard to categorize, but it's different. Lots of time signatures, lots of fun playing. Kelly did a great job on it.
Well, and obviously that's what you're known for, I guess, in your career is kind of the proggier, type music. But you say 12 years. I mean, is that just because of necessity? Like, what was the reason for that? Because that's a long time to put something together.
It is. Basically, I went into learn mode. So I wanted to learn more about Latino grooves and African grooves. And it's one thing to understand them. It's another to play them with the right amount of control and master the groove, so to speak. So that took some time. And then once you mastered the groove, now you have to write the music. So what I would do is I work on grooves until the music just kind of came to me, right? And it basically, this album, we tried to throw away the rule book, but what we realized is, you try to throw away the box, you just end up with a bigger box.
I love that. So Kelly, were you, I guess, part of this from the 12 years ago till now? You came in midway. How did that work?
Yeah, I came into the picture after the first album had been completed. And at that point, Steve's previous guitar player, Mark, had passed away. And so he's got a brand new album and no guitar player. So I came into the picture shortly after that all went down. But the genesis of this album started, I would say, and Steve, maybe you can correct me, but I would say it was around 2010 where we started to go, okay, it's time to start writing for the new album. Now, the previous album was a full band, keyboards, bass, singer, right? It wasn't an instrumental album. And when we started to write for this one, that was the intent, is that it was going to be the same unit initially. But as we got writing, things just started to take a different direction. And I think Steve and I just kind of looked at each other and went, let's just forget about all that. Let's just play exactly what we want to play. And as that turned out to be, it turned out to be instrumental. So we pared it down to a 3-piece. And so yeah, I was there from the beginning of that process for album number 2.
Well, I mean, if obviously we're all on social media and things like Facebook and Instagram, they have a great way of saying, hey, here, this was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I had a memory that popped up from 3 years ago that felt like it was like 2 months ago.
Weird.
And so time flies. So Steve, I'm gonna guess you're going, okay, well, this was 12 years, but there probably was parts where it didn't seem that long, and then parts like it seemed like the gestation of an elephant. You know what I mean? Like where it was taking forever. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I don't think we ever felt like we were slacking off, or it took what it took. And I think in today's music business, the album was going to be done when it was done. So whatever that took, that's what it took. And I think we went into it with that in mind. So you can't really explore stuff and expect everything to just fall together in a couple of days. It just doesn't happen,
I think too the way that the music business is now, it's not like, I guess, back in the day when you guys would have had pressure from a record company to say, hey, get in, get this thing out. We got to get you on tour. We got to start getting money back. You do have that flexibility to kind of put something together at your own pace and as you see fit to get it out there. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is. I think we did this one mainly to please ourselves, which is probably the first time I've ever really done that. So we didn't worry about commerciality or who's going to like this. As long as we liked it, it was cool. And that's a really different attitude. So it took what it took. I mean, when you hear the album, it's obvious that we took a long time to put it together because it's a musical journey. It takes you a lot of places. And in order to get that happening, you have to kind of go those places yourself first and then feel your way around within that to come up with the best stuff that suits that,
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about this a little bit, Kelly, when you and I chatted a month or so ago, but, I mean, the business is so different, but to be able to kind of go, hey, this is what we're putting out. It's coming out the way we like it. You don't like it. That's cool. Don't buy it. But you actually get to put something out that you're very proud of, that you don't have some suit who, feels like you have to get something out to pay a company back. I think that's pretty cool.
It is. And it's not to say that we didn't consider certain things. Like, first of all, if you like it, let's say you as a musician, you want to write something to please yourself first. It's not really a selfish thing because at the end of the day, if you like it, chances are someone else is also going to like it, right?
Sure.
So there's that. You're on the right track if you're doing things that are making your own hair on your arm stand up. But the other thing too was during the writing process and the recording, Steve and I would be sitting there in the control room that you see right there, and we would toss ideas around and go, that's too much, or we could actually make that a little more intense. Like, in other words, we're looking at it like cooking a dish. Is that too much seasoning? Is it gonna ruin it if we go to that level with it, or should we pare it back, right? So there are still considerations that you could say were for other people, right? Like for a listener, but ultimately we still had to be happy with the dish when it lands on the table, which we are. That's why it took so long.
I think that's great. Look, gentlemen, we're going to take a little break here to pay some bills after we said paying some bills to get an album out, but we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And as we have Steve Negus, we have my buddy Kelly, and who's the third member of the band?
Mike D. Benedictus. He's our bass player.
Well, no, that right there, if that's not a rock and roll name, I've never heard one before in my life.
That's true. That's true.
Just before we go back to the album, I mentioned this to Kelly, Steve, and I pride myself to not ask people questions they've probably answered a million times. But you know what? I've got you here, and I'm gonna ask it. When your name comes up around, and I'm a drummer around fellow drummers, everybody talks about a distinctive drum solo that was recorded on a live album that everybody goes, "Oh my God, that's Saga." Do you get tired of answering questions about that? I mean, you're known for that. We'll call it that signature piece,
right? No, I don't get tired of that. What I do get tired of is a lot of people want to delve into the politics of why I left and all that stuff. Yeah. And my thing is forward thinking. I don't really dwell on that stuff. It's what's important is what we're doing now. And that's what we focus on. I guess if you look at recording as being a snapshot of where you are today, then that's where I was in 1982 or whenever it was I did that. That's a snapshot of what I was then, and I'm certainly proud of that. I think we did a lot of exciting things. But being a forward thinker, it's more about looking on to what we're doing. What I'm doing in particular now, from a drum standpoint, that has to excite me. So I have to push that envelope every day. I basically try and learn something new every day. So I sit at my kit and play for a couple hours almost every day.
That's awesome.
And
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say it's the process that's the important thing, which again is probably why we took as long as we did to finish this. The process is cool. Once it's done, you kind of hang it up. You say, "Yeah, I'm proud of it, and I did that. Now what's next?" So it's a process of joy to make this kind of music, but it's also you do a lot of sort of soul searching to come up with stuff that you don't hear every day on rock radio.
And I feel as I have you here, and I mean, I love what you're saying about the forward thinking. I mean, I'm a huge Sopranos fan, and Tony Soprano had a line, "Remember when is the lowest form of conversation," right? Because everybody they don't talk about what they're doing now. They talk about the day, but I will say, I feel like I owe you some royalty money for some of those 16th notes hi-hat patterns with the fast kick underneath. It's because when I was learning, man, I had such a hard time with that, and it was just like, what are you doing? So thank you for that. I don't often get to thank people for being part of my musical upbringing, so I do appreciate that for sure.
Not a problem. I think when you reflect back on the Saga stuff, I always thought of myself as an R&B drummer.
Yeah.
So that's what made Saga so unique, I think, was you basically had a prog band with an R&B drummer, and that's why it took it to those places. If you listen to those grooves, a lot of them are based in R&B, which is what gave Saga such a unique sound.
There's something I'm going to ask you in a second but I want to ask Kelly just quickly. So, I mean, here's a gentleman that you've likely grown up listening to. Now he lives in your own backyard. You've probably known him quite a while, but it must have been neat to get into a room and just kind of have the blank canvas and go, okay, we're going to put something together. We're starting from scratch. I've got one of the, recognizable names here. Let's go. It must have been a great time.
Definitely really cool because he took more of a writing initiative than you would expect a drummer to take. So when he talks about working out grooves and studying different styles and stuff, and then the music comes to him, he's not kidding. He would literally start mapping out parts on like keyboard parts, or he'd have a guitar sketch. He would have a pretty good idea of where the general direction was going to go before I walk in the door. From there, we hash out the parts. Like from there, we'll try to refine the guitar parts, and then when I come back the next time, it's gone in a different direction again. So yeah, I didn't know what to expect, honestly, the first time, or maybe even the second. But after that, you get the idea, and it's quite what was the word I would look for? I forget. But we were very productive every night that we would get together to work. We never left empty-handed, so to speak. Something always got accomplished. So it's still true to this day. I mean, just to illustrate his point about forward thinking, he invites me over to his place to listen to the final mixes. Before we hit play on those, he goes, "Check this out, I got something new." Right? So he's already coming up with new stuff for the next album. And we haven't even listened to the mixes of the current album yet. So there you go.
That's so well, and so I always love to talk to people about because people that have not had the experience of being in a studio, they don't realize that it can be very overwhelming. Hearing yourself for the first time and going, man, this part is awesome that I'm playing. And then you actually hear it back and you go, this doesn't fit at all with what I thought. Like, was there moments where you guys were putting that thing, that type of, together, and it'd be like, oh, this whole part that we just came up with didn't fit or isn't working, or Steve, especially drummers hearing themselves play for the first time, it can be like a little bit nail biting, right?
Well, we wrote a lot of stuff. I mean, there's basically 10 tracks on the album. We probably wrote, I would say, close to 50. And then you just kind of let them, as Kelly said, it's like cooking a meal. Sometimes you cook stuff and you go, that's not quite working, so I'll put that recipe away and let's move on to something we know works. So you never know when you start. I mean, you just basically start putting ideas down, and they either come to fruition or they get shelved. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but that's all part of the process. And failure is a big part of success. Even when I'm working on grooves, I'll fail with something, and then that leads me to figure out how I failed to make it a success. So it's all part and parcel of the same thing. You just try stuff, and as you try stuff, if you're paying attention, you can draw from all the stuff you do, but it doesn't necessarily all end up on the same album. What does end up on the album is the net results of what you think is the most successful.
And on that note, we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back with Steve and Kerry after this. We are back with Steve and Kelly.
Kelly!
My mistake. I'm so sorry. Like I said, we get this new thing for TV, and I'm trying to watch a stopwatch, and I get people texting me, and I'm trying to do a good interview here. So, Steve, just before the last break, you said something that I think is key, because a lot of people, they don't embrace the failures. They want the successes, right? It's kind of like, if you don't have something right away, it's a total, and I think a lot of it has to do with, today's social media, where everybody's life is amazing and whatever. But you said, embrace the failures basically to get the success. Is that something that you've kind of embraced your whole career?
Even more so now, it's not about instant gratification. You have to get in and explore the places you can go to decide where you will go. And every time you take something left, you bring something back to the middle, and then that becomes part of the main thrust. So it's all part of the process as far as I'm concerned.
Kelly, you and I talked about this last time when we were talking about, learning an instrument, and I've discussed this with a few people before, where, you struggle, and then it just seems like all of a sudden you're amazing, right? And there's that little piece in there where you don't kind of get where the conversion happened, where everything that you were doing all came together. This album kind of seems in a way like maybe that was kind of the process. Like you guys started, and it was like, there was this piece in the middle that, boom, that's did you remember that actual part when you thought, okay, we're turning a corner here, we got something really, really good?
I figured we had something pretty darn good right off the bat, but what kind of illustrates what you're mentioning is there were periods of time where we weren't doing a heck of a lot. Like, for example, Steve had to redo the studio that we record out of at his place, Blue Room Studio. There was a period where it was discombobulated and we couldn't do anything anyway. I mean, the floors were ripped up, like everything, right? So there were periods of time where we just had time to sit back and think about it because there was nothing else to do. So when you get time to consider what you've done so far and have no choice but to just sit there and consider it because of some sort of roadblock, then sometimes you come back and you tweak differently. And sometimes it's right where you wanted it to be in the first place, and you just continue going from there, right? So pretty much that.
Having said that, most of what Kelly put down originally was guide stuff. So we'd be in the control room, and I'd say, okay, well, let's just put a solo on this. Doesn't really matter if it's the solo. It's probably not. Maybe we'll replace it later. Oh geez, there's my phone.
That's somebody looking to buy the album, Steve.
Go away, I'm busy. Kelly would put something down, and a lot of those are still on the album. But the idea was just generally to have the feel of his solo, and the solos he put down were brilliant, so we kept them. And there's a lot of stuff like that.
And you know what? And here we go. Third segment. We didn't even get to the name of the album is
Economy of Motion.
Economy of Motion. And judging by what you've described is on there, there you go, right there. It's a perfectly suited name for what people are going to get. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. That came from a conversation Kelly and I had way back. And economy of motion is really the process of how you get better.
You mentioned something, I think it was in the first segment, where you Steve, you still have the time to sit down and attack the kid a couple hours a day. What I have all kinds of different friends that are guitar players, musicians, bass players, whatever. The importance of practice like that at any stage in your life, I personally think is very important. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, I don't think, even though I'm getting up there in age, I don't think it's time to rest on the laurels. Like we kind of touched on that earlier with some of the saga stuff that I did. I have to push the envelope every day. I need to learn something new, and I have to keep this gray matter up here functioning. So I need to challenge myself. And if I don't challenge myself, I feel deprived, and Kelly's the same. I mean, Kelly lives guitar constantly. So the fact that we have such a love for playing, such a love for our instruments, I think is what is taking us to the next level, which is what I feel this album is for us,
And the challenge with being a musician, I think, to the people that aren't, it always looks fun, therefore it's not work, right? And people don't understand. And Kelly, we talked about this. You're playing a show, and my price is X. Well, why is it X? It's like, it's not for that 2 hours that I'm playing. It's for the 25 years it took me to get here, and people kind of miss that.
Yeah, they do. I don't blame them for missing it, right? Because you don't want an audience member to feel all of the work that you put into it. You want them to enjoy the fruits of that labor, right? It's not their responsibility to sit in the room with you for hours a day watching you to appreciate it. You just want them to appreciate the end result, right? So that's exactly how they see it. They either appreciate the end result or they don't. So I can't fault anyone for thinking that way, but yeah, I mean, do you want music in your establishment or not?
Yeah, and that's exactly. You're exactly right. And it's been said that the masses decide what's good and what's bad. I don't necessarily agree with that. I've heard some stuff that I like a lot that might have sold 10 copies, but at the end of the day, good is good, right? And and that's it. So, Mr. Negus, where are people going to find this creation that is, if is it out now, or is it moments away from coming out? When's it hitting?
Well, it's not officially. Actually, we're thinking about Friday as being our official release date. But now I'm in the throes of all the stuff that I don't necessarily enjoy, which is I don't mind doing interviews, but the mailings and the distribution and all that stuff. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm talking to somebody about European distribution. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen now. The album is done. A few friends around us have copies, but at this point, that's about it. As we speak, our website's being worked on to set up so that people can actually buy this. And that's all stuff that is necessary evil, if you like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're aiming for a Friday launch of having the link live to be able to purchase it.
Well, you make sure you send that to me.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And we're going to do a Facebook Live reveal, I guess, of it.
Awesome.
Introduction to it on Friday. So details on that are coming soon too.
Just like that, we're out of time. Too easy. Hopefully we push that this album is coming out and go get it. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Yeah, Sean, very cool.
Peace.